What's happening, sports fans? Welcome back to another episode of Mama and Papa Joe. Beautiful day today. We're going to fire up the Cannon offset smoker and do a hot and fast brisket. First time doing one of those, we're looking at 350 degrees plus. Let's get right into it. All right, we've got a decent prime. Not the best in terms of shape. I hate this huge fat seam we've got right here. Not a whole lot of meat, but there wasn't much to choose from. I'm going to get this out the package and we'll get a better look at it. Not bad looking, decent marbling. Because this is going to be a hot and fast cook, I am not going to take off much fat from this brisket. I'm mainly going to just be shaping it. And you've seen my trim a million times. If you're looking for something more detailed, I'll put a video link in my top left. Wow, look at that, man. That's ridiculous. That's all fat. This little seam right here. Wow, man, gosh, look at that. We just absolutely have to do something with this. Cannot leave that there, man. All right, folks, so here she is. I ended up taking off more than I really wanted to, man, but to get a decent shape, I absolutely had to. There's still quite a bit of hard fat in here, but I'm going to leave that alone. I left most of the fat on the back side, the split that was here originally. Not much we're going to do about that right now. I'm not going to take off any silver skin. I'm going to leave all this for a little additional protection. We're going to be cooking this fat side up. A little bit of my spritz, which is just 2 parts water and 1 part apple cider vinegar. I'm just gonna moisten this brisket just a hair and come in here with my homemade rub I put together. This is 4 tablespoons of 16 mesh black pepper, 1 tablespoon of your average Lowry seasoned salt, and 1 tablespoon of kosher salt. So pretty much 2 parts pepper to 1 part salt. I'm seasoning the fat side last. Get these sides first, pat them in. And we're gonna head outside and get our Cannon offset ready to go. All right, folks, you can see in there, I've got the remnants of a bag of lump, just the crumbs. I didn't want them falling through the grate, so I put the bottom of the bag in addition to some briquettes to get things started. Today we're running oak and pecan. I love that combination. Once our coals have taken off on their own, I'm going to come in with just some small pieces, and I'll give those about 10 minutes to get going on their own. And then I'm closing the door on this firebox. This should not take us very long. All right, so we're approaching that 350 that we're looking for, folks. Let's get this puppy on. Brisket has a nice sweat going. We're going with our point towards the firebox. And as usual, we want to make sure we iron it out, get it in the shape that we want it to cook. Because this is such high heat, I'm looking at probably an hour, hour and a half, coming back to start placing some foil on the front end of this point and the back end of this flat, because that's where the heat is just smacking up against it. 350, folks. All right, folks, we've been rocking pretty steady right around that 350 mark. We're at the 2-hour mark, and we are starting to really get some rendering. I'm surprised I haven't seen more curling. All right, we're not going to do anything besides covering the point and the flat. And that just means a little foil to protect that. And same thing here. And look at that split that we had back there. All right, but not a problem. We'll come back out here in an hour or so. All right, folks, 3.5 hours. We're still rocking steady. Right now it's running 375. We're good to go. I checked this about 45 minutes ago, and we're pushing that temperature that I really like. We're 183, all right, 184. We're going to be wrapping this. We're going to take it inside. Oh, she's swollen nicely. I've got some smoked tallow. You've seen this before. Soften this butcher paper. Hopefully minimize this brisket sticking. All right, and we're going to come in here, fat side down. And we'll get this back on the pit. All right, so we're probably looking at another 1.5 to 2 hours. 5 hours and 15 minutes, folks. All right, we're reading 208, 209. This really attests to that point I've made in the past where the hotter you cook, the higher your finished temperature. So that probes pretty nicely. But with these hot and fast briskets, I kind of have the idea that they're not fully rendered the way a low and slow brisket would render. So I'm going to pull this because it probes nicely, but I want this to continue rendering. I want this to continue jellifying. So I think I'm going to do a long hot hold on this brisket. So we're going to get it off of here, cool it down to about 150, 155, and then put it in my warmer overnight. All right, our warmer is just about reached temperature, and our brisket is right around that 155 range. I placed a couple of pans of water in there. These warmers work great with lots of humidity. So with just one brisket, they could suffer a little bit. So I add some water to create a little bit more humidity. I'm just going to cover that brisket right there on that sheet tray with some foil and pop it into the warmer. We are back. We've given this almost 15 hours, man. Look at all that oil that's come out. This brisket finishing the rendering process. But let's take a look. All right, we lost a little bark down here off of the fat. That does not look too bad. So folks, once again, if you ever forget how your grain is running, just remember it always runs towards the thickest part of the flat, in the direction of the thickest part of the flat. Look at that moisture in that end piece, even with all that heat beating up against it. This is more fat than I would normally leave on, but because we were cooking so hot and fast, I definitely wanted the extra protection, and I think it worked, man. And as usual, I'm not gonna slice this entire brisket just yet, man. Oh, I'm loving these slices. That fat just melts in your mouth, man. Let's go here. There's nothing wrong with that. And here's that fat chunk that I was talking about. In my normal trim, I would have knocked that off, but it served its purpose. Oh, one of the best pieces of brisket right there, man. You're not gonna find anything better. And we're gonna call that good for now, man. We're not gonna slice anymore. These are the parts of the brisket that everybody wants right there, man. Wow. Look at that. That is beautiful. So we got it done, folks. Hot and fast brisket, 5 hours and 15 minutes, and we did like a 15-hour hold, and it turned out an awesome brisket. I want to thank you guys and gals, as usual, for hanging out with Mom and Papa Joe's. We really appreciate it. Be on the lookout for another video coming very soon. And as always, Mom and I want you guys to take care of yourselves, love each other, and we'll see you when we see you. Holla.